So, like, what is your truth? Your truth is you're deeply afraid. You feel deeply helpless. You feel helpless. You feel deeply ashamed. You are not at all able to face the pain because you're so fucking afraid of it. This is your truth. So you need to be able to face that, even if it sounds like negative and you don't want it. And then you need to face the truth that you don't want it and you want to run away from it and you want to hide in spirituality. You need to hide, you need to confront all of those truths. And only then this is the automatic path to love. But it's not the mental path to love of like skipping, like you said, some of the steps in between. It's through the darkness into the light and not away from the darkness into the light.
Strip away the story, be with the pure sensation. Like really, most of the times it's something like tension, but even tension is just a word. It could be like something like tingling, but really stay with the immediate experience.
Yes.
And then from that experience, find like something that is, even if it's just 0.5%, that is pleasurable about that, and focus on that and expand on that. And then you will see that it's almost like you watch the sensation with different eyes, and that is changing the sensation as well.
Welcome to the Spiritual Bypasses podcast today with Tim and Jannick. And Ashley is actually caught up in hell, stuck there, or, a thunderstorm, whatever it is, but she couldn't make it today. But we had an amazing episode. We noticed that you guys loved the emotional process that we did a few weeks ago with Ashley. So again, this is a very experimental episode where we went into the shadow. We explored this live with Tim and how you can alchemize anxiety into a sense of power and drive and purpose. And it's very direct. You can immediately apply it. And it's a very, very powerful process that you can learn in this episode. So stay tuned, practice along, and we are very excited to bring this episode.
Are we online?
We're live.
We're live. Oh my God, such a relief. Wow. Jannick and I are have been pretty lost for the last 20 minutes discussing various things and getting really anxious / excited about this podcast. And it's a great moment to be excited and anxious because we want to talk about the shadow today. And I thought we would just use our anxiety and our excitement and this slight feeling of unease to not only explain what the shadow is, but actually to take these feelings into the podcast and share about how this shows up for us as we speak here. So the shadow has this tendency to overwhelm us. Like most of the times when we started the podcast now and we were like anxious and excited, we didn't choose to be that way. So the shadow is, you could say the shadow is possessing us. It's having us in its grips. And most of the times we feel like we can't do anything about it. It's like this second entity that enters our field of experience and takes control of ourselves. And this can show, like in our case, as anxiety, as fear, as anger, as love. I think most of you have been at some point in your life, if you're lucky, it's a beautiful feeling, have been in love, like have this feelings of butterflies in your stomach. But what most people don't know is that this can also be a form of shadow projection, that you project what you have repressed in yourself outwards onto another person. And you're so in love because in that person, you see what you lack within yourself. So for us, it felt like this episode was sort of a dragon we had to slay. And we were like, sort of, okay, are we really doing this? I mean, this is our 17th episode. So we're seasoned podcast veterans. But this time it was different. And maybe it was different because our shadow was creeping up and taking control of our senses and of our thoughts and of our feelings. And we were just like little boys under our little blankets and fearing the monster under our bed. or in the closet? Maybe. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And I just want to ask you, Jannick, how do you feel as we speak here in this podcast?
Yes, thank you for that wonderful introduction of this special episode where we both are confronted with our shadows, apparently. And yeah, I can definitely feel something inside of my body, but I don't want to name it because that is a technique that I love to do, is just exploring like a curious little child, maybe even a curious alien that hasn't been on this planet in this body before. So the only thing it knows is actually experience itself. And this brings you out of the head and into the body. So what I'm experiencing right now is some tingling in my chest, and it moves to the shoulders as we speak as well. Some kind of like a knot in my throat as well. And then more tingling, almost like butterflies, and my mind wants to come in and call this nervousness, but I said I'm not gonna judge it or not gonna name it, categorize it in my belly area. So yeah, this is what I'm sensing, and then I'd say some heaviness also, some feeling of like pressure and constriction in my shoulder area and the sides of my body.
Hmm.
Yeah. And what I love to do next is, because the moment I name those things, they become much more harmless than they were before. And then I ask myself, can I even take pleasure in those sensations? And it's so interesting. I'm a big fan of the book Existential Kink, as many of you might know, because I speak about it a lot, especially I spoke about it a lot in the first episodes. And she always tells the story of where she went to this Tantra workshop where actually people were massaging her clit with a glove in all different kinds of ways. And then some of them you might like a lot, and some of the ways that your clit gets touched you might not like so much. And for the people who don't have a clit, who have something else, imagine that somebody touches whatever you have down there in that area and whatever makes you feel pleasure. And then see if you can imagine how that might feel to be touched there in a very pleasant way, and then in other ways that are not so pleasant at first. And she compares this experience that she had in this workshop with life a lot. So, life bringing you all these different kinds of sensations and kind of like stimulating you. And in this moment, I am being stimulated as well by quote unquote nervousness or whatever it is, by the situation. And how much can I allow myself to feel pleasure? And the more I can, the more my resistance drops. And the more my resistance drops, the less of an issue it becomes, the less attention it takes and robs from what I actually want to do. The more I can allow it, the more space and expansion is being created in my body, and the more I can focus on what I want to say. So it's a great exercise to ask yourself, can I take pleasure in this un, quote unquote unpleasant experience that I'm having right now, that I might call nervousness, but somebody else, if they are with their lover, might call a feeling of intense love or attraction to somebody else with the exact same body sensations, just a different interpretation of it.
Hmm. Would you be open to guide me through this process?
Yeah, sure. We can
Is that
try.
like a thing you can do? Yeah, either you can do yourself or you can facilitate on someone else. Because I recently had have a really present topic that also just came up. I had two car crashes as a kid, and I increasingly have a really hard time driving in cars when someone else is driving, especially when I sit on the back seat. It's just it's creating so much tension within me, and I feel like I can't do anything, and it's getting more and more. And also, for example, now, for some reason, I experience like flashes of visions of, for example, the laptop exploding and me dying or something, like something really, really unreasonable. Like that's all. It's also something that I want to talk to someone about, because that to me seems like just trauma. Like car crash is like a very normal way people accumulate trauma, and it can be released through the body. So I want to talk to someone or have someone facilitate on me with that topic. But I just, while you spoke, I had the experience again, and I was asking myself, what would happen if I found a way to make peace with that? Because when I think about it, or when these things happen, just like many other things that bubble up from the shadow, in the first place, in the first moment, they are hard to grasp. They're just like something is appearing, and they're really unpleasant. So you don't take the time to first explore them, because you instantly push them away.
Yeah.
And by no means you take the time, or you are in the consciousness of making peace with that, or even find pleasure in that. So I'm miles, like I'm more on the spectrum of what the fuck is this? I want to get rid of this. And I can feel that it's very primal, and it's so interesting because it just like there's no, there's no seeming
Trigger.
connection. Like I literally don't understand it. It's
Mm.
very, it feels like my brain is wired in a certain way. So I think this could be a great opportunity to, um, we talked about now what the shadow kind of is. It's these feelings that are just bubbling up in the form of projections, and also in the form of intense reactions that we seemingly cannot control.
Yeah.
So I think this is a good basis for exploring this now.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'd love to explore this with you. And yeah, like you said, I mean, trauma is a word and it can get very heady. It's just a label. The experience of trauma in this moment is actually usually fear, and some form of fear that you're experiencing right now. And like fear then creates thoughts of things happening, like your laptop exploding, because who is afraid wants to feel safe. So if you are afraid, your mind creates something for you that makes you feel more safe. And one of the ways we create safety, or we try to create safety, is by already playing scenarios in our head that might happen.
Mm.
And we all know this, like a lot, obviously. What happens, like when you can't sleep at night, or when you go before you go on a date or whatever it is, you think of all the scenarios because you want to feel safer. So the experience that you're having when you do this is fear, and this is how it shows in the body. And shadow is also just a word. It's also just a label for something, and it can become very heady very easily. But again, it's fear in the experience right now of shadow. What is a shadow? It shows up as fear. So you are being shown something, life confronts you with something, and then the shadow means, oh, this is hidden inside of me. I had to repress this. I had to hide this inside of me. For example, somebody's really successful. I had to hide my own drive for success or my own ambitions for success. So I see them and then I get triggered because I see it in them. And because I can't have it, they can't have it. Just a simple example. But what is the experience again in this moment? It's fear. It's fuck. There's the success that I needed to repress all my life. I'm afraid because now it might bubble up. What can I do? Judge. Judging is great, for example. It's a great technique to keep it repressed. But it makes you feel uncomfortable in your body. So again, fear. So why am I saying this? Because all of this is fear. The shadow is fear, the trauma is showing up as fear in this moment. And there's this beautiful saying of the author of Existential King. She says, fear is pleasure without permission.
Mm.
And I love this. And it sounds really counterintuitive, but if you really embody this, it means that every fear can be transformed into pleasure. And in order to do that, it helps to create a curiosity and a mindset of playfulness and like not taking things like too seriously, obviously. And this is something that comes with the exploration, but it's also something that we can already bring into the exploration as a quality that we can invite right now is curiosity and playfulness and be like, she sometimes likes to say, imagine you're this god that was really bored, so it came into Tim's body and wanted to experience some trauma and some fear and some anxiety, and wants to perform really well, and it's all really important and meaningful this whole life, even though you're a god and you can just create whatever you want, and if you die nothing happens, but you create this very, very, intense and meaningful and serious situation in your life. So this is you now,
Mm.
experiencing this. And imagining this and bringing in this kind of mindset helps me, at least, to be more curious and playful with this exploration.
Yes, it definitely resonated. It felt like it created more distance, like as if something else in me wants to have this experience, but not necessarily me. Like in parts work, we call this unblending. I felt like a sense of ease, but also I felt like a sense of anxiety. So I felt very present, and I can tune into that field even now. And I know this from having panic attacks. I can control it really well, so I'm not having a panic attack now, but this feeling of I'm alive and it's terrifying. Like
Yeah,
the present moments feels like tingling and terrifying, and this is what comes up to me. And when I sense into what is happening in that moment, I experience that, let's call it flashback, that vision, that memory. It felt like something was I was hitting something here, and
mhm,
I could really like even like visually see something in my head that was like cotton or something, I don't know, and I could really feel like my head was smashing against something, and that impact, like my brain was shattered, and that it's like a metal icy feeling, and feels very brutal. And now I can feel empathy towards that part of me who's feeling anxiety with life, because if a young part of me experienced that, the brutality that life can have out of nothing, just something is completely shattering you, and there's no explanation for it, even though people try to explain it. It's completely magical. I can understand that and also feel a sense of grief that comes with that. So I feel like this is like there's some movement or some opening happening in the area around my face and my upper chest, which is also, like I just said, which is also kind of the area that was affected by what I would say a car crash. Like I don't have any specific memory. I was very young. I think 3 or 4. We had 2 car crashes. No one died. It was, everyone, it was all good. No hospital, no nothing, but nonetheless, like a great fear, like you said, that emerged and that also spilled over into other areas of my life that have nothing to do with driving a car, I would say. So that's what's coming up for me.
yeah, yeah, beautiful. Thank you for describing that. And first of all, what I like to do is acknowledge that we are afraid. Like, you're afraid in this moment. Everyone is afraid. Fear is present because life is threatening and there is danger. And so we are afraid. And a lot of times, in order to stabilize, we try to avoid just admitting that we are afraid. Like, I'm yes, I'm fucking afraid right now. I'm afraid. I'm afraid in this moment. I'm afraid in this moment. I'm afraid in this moment. And like slowly letting this sink in that it's okay to be afraid. I experience stuff. Life is threatening. I'm a human being. I'm vulnerable. At any time, things can happen. So I'm afraid. And then recognizing that there's a mechanism that's like, no, I need to stabilize this. I need to imagine safe things, in order to balance the being afraid. But yes, your system, like you said, or a young part of you learned that at any time when you just sit in a car and you feel really safe, an accident can happen, and all of a sudden you're not safe anymore. You're injured, and probably maybe even for a moment, it felt like life threatening. So this was then programmed into that part of you. So obviously afterwards you'll be like, yeah, I felt safe in the car, and then something bad happened. So I'm afraid that will happen again. It makes the most sense. Like it's so smart of your system to do that. And acknowledging this and admitting that being afraid brings in even more empathy into your system, even more space to hold that part. So yeah, let's see what this does to you when I say this and I bring in that quality of more spaciousness.
Can feel like it's a like I'm in touch with something. It almost feels like the peak point of a movie or something. It's very it feels very meaningful what's happening now. So I also ask you to be, or yeah, I need you to be present with that right now and help me find guidance, whatever. And I can feel my arms. They are like, what I also notice is that my forearms got increasingly tight, and also my feet and my calves. And this is what I noticed, like this feeling of presence and this feeling of intensity, but more or less in a good way. And then the sentence came, or like a part came up that was a warrior kind of archetype that was coming from my belly up into my chest and sort of made my posture really straight and graceful. And he said something like, "You got to brace yourself for life." And he said that with a quality of kingliness and wisdom, because he says, yes, life can be like that. Life is, he says something like, of course you're afraid of life because life could kill you.
Mm.
So the best answer to that thing that you experience is courage and strength, and experience life to the fullest, even though it's terrifying. Like, yes, life is terrifying to you. And you know that deep within you, there's a place that knows, a part that knows that it needs to be contended with, or it needs to be experienced regardless. So it's like this energy of courage that is also showing up. And also my hands and my feet, there was like this impulse, either like to push something away with my feet, and also to push something away with my arms or with my hands, which makes total sense, because you want to free yourself in that situation. You want to be like, I want to get away from here. I need to get out of here as quickly as I can. I need to run with my feet. I need to push something away with my feet. And that warrior in that moment was already online, he was like, hey, we gotta run, or we gotta fight. Like, we gotta do something, we gotta penetrate. Like, we need to be online right now, but we can't. So it's almost like this beaten warrior that is now coming back online. It's like, yes, we need to brace ourselves. Like, we need to gather the troops, but not in a way of we're afraid of life. It's more like, let's get back to our strength and to our resources, something like that. And that comes with a feeling of like an upright posture, like a very straight spine with a very clear gaze, deep breaths, and this feeling of um, presence that sort of penetrates this veil of anxiety, this aura of anxiety and dread that is surrounding me, almost like a shield or something that is surrounding me, like an aura, and is protecting me or something without changing the fact that the danger is there. Like, the danger can stay there, the fear can stay there. And what comes now is like this added quality of king energy or warrior energy or um, courage. And that makes me feel really uh, present. So that's what's happening uh, within me. I don't know if that's already like existential kink territory, but that's how yeah, how I experience it now.
Yeah. Yeah, a very beautiful process. And for the listeners at home, as you can see, Tim is very experienced with parts work and working with archetypes and images and symbols. So this is what's showing up for him. And he's self-facilitating a lot. So I don't even need to do much. And the process is already unfolding because he's connected to his self and he can guide himself through it. And now, as Tim already asked himself as well, like, is this already existential king territory? We can we can take like this, what already happened, and see this as an important step in our process today because the fear was allowed to be there alongside to this king energy, to this like I'd say this confidence, or in German Zuversicht. It's like confidence in a sense that yes, it's both allowed to be there at the same time, which is already great uh, because it creates more space. If you are still stuck on stage one, where you are resisting what's happening, you're resisting the fear, you first need to allow the fear to be there before you can even take pleasure in it. And has happened now. So now, as a next step, we want to like move towards that fear again with this newly created sense of safety and allowance, and be like, can I find something pleasurable in the sensation of the fear? This is really important. So removing the story as best as we can. And just, I know this is scary, and at some point, usually the thought comes in of like, am I losing my mind? Because isn't this supposed to be feeling uncomfortable so that I avoid it? So isn't my fear showing me, don't go there, so I need to avoid it? And yes, it is in a sense of protecting you from survival, but this is not true for trauma energy, for trauma fear, because trauma fear looks like we also want to go away from it, like running away from the tiger. But actually, what the counterintuitive part of this is that no, we move towards it, and we can even find pleasure in it, and that's the quickest and fastest way to integrate it back in this energy that is stuck, to integrate it back into the system. So we want to move towards this energy that you described of fear and this sensation in your body, remove the story from it, and see, can I find anything pleasurable about this so-called fear energy in my body? And it might help to describe it first and then see, is there anything like, ooh, like juicy, anything pleasurable there, just in the sensation?
Yeah. One thing that I want to preface is that you said I'm self-facilitating a lot. And I just noticed that in this context of what we're speaking about now, I want to surrender more. Also, in the beginning, before the podcast, we talked about surrender and control. And I find I can understand why it's hard for me to surrender in a state like this, because surrender was scary. So I want to give myself the opportunity to not control this process, but to be open to your suggestions. So when I let go of the story and really just tune into the sensations, it feels like a tingling. It feels like I can notice there's tension in my back. Now I need to yawn. And the tingling is like something like let's go. Something like that. Like it's a feels like it's giving me, or like it's providing me with something, with energy, actually. Mm.
Yes,
I can feel
that's
that that this fear, like when I sense into my surroundings, it almost feels like I'm being made like really compact, like something is pressing onto me, and I'm getting like really, um, yeah, like really, really small, like this, and really protected, like something is pressing against me, and that's interesting to notice. It almost feels like an embrace, like something is giving me a hug, but the hug is quite a strong hug. So I feel like
okay.
enveloped in something. It's also happening.
Yeah, yeah, nice. And you said something important there is the energy. So it's contracted energy. It what fear is usually it's contracted life force energy. So this is a great step as well to recognize this as energy. That's a source of energy that we can use once we allow ourselves to see it as that. So again, like tuning in with these sensations, noticing that this is your power. This is a source of power. You can either hold it back, which takes energy, or you can open it up and allow it to this life force energy to flow through you and be like, whoa, whoa, there's a lot of power in this container right here. And
Yes,
yes.
yes, totally. It's quite amazing what's happening right now, because like the life force, the Kundalini, or whatever you want to call it, it's just names, but let's go with the sensation of like tingling and energy. It's increasing, and my presence is increasing, and also it's like I shook hands with life and made like, yeah, you're peaceful. And also then like an insight came, that is that it's almost like the description of something, of my description of life, like life is, or my stance, my relationship with life, was causing me to withdraw from life, from the life force energy. But I needed to get in contact with that fear within my body in order to know, oh, this tingling here, I just call it anxiety, I just call it fear, and this weird feeling around here, I just call it like terror or being terrified or whatever. But if I get in touch with it, I notice that the you could like, let's imagine someone is holding a sword. You could say this is a deadly weapon and he's going to kill everyone, or you can just say, oh, that's a cool sword, looks amazing, he must be a great artist with that sword. You know what I mean? And in the same way, I was just like, something in me was describing a phenomenon like the tingling or my outside world in a certain way, but that didn't change the essence of what I experience. It just made me withdraw from it. And now I can feel like, oh, in the past 2, 3, even 4 weeks, I felt like life felt kind of dull. And I was like, is this just winter depression? I was like, yeah, everybody feels like messed up, and let's just not, let's not go into that. But also, life didn't feel like magical and enchanted, and I wasn't really feeling bliss a lot. And now I can feel that naturally returning. It almost feels like I'm waking up from a dream or something.
That's it. Yes. Yeah, that's it. That's like re the process of reintegrating life force energy that happens through the reinterpretation from something we called fear or anxiety before into something that almost gets alchemized into power, into drive, into anger, into aliveness. Yeah, this is the opposite from this is the difference between a depressed, literally depressed state. And it was literally the image that you had, something pressing, yeah,
Oh yeah, yeah,
to
yeah.
a to an expansive, like I
Oh yeah,
to me this image came of this warrior god, and like there's this
yeah, yeah,
thunder
yeah.
all around him and the darkness and the
Taking up
light, and he
space.
uses
Yeah,
all that, yeah, and it's like wide chest, and it's like when like this power that before was pressing him down, he is like, oh, this is part of me, this is part of my weapon, this is part of my power, like when these like statues appearing next to him, being his allies, and all of a sudden he recognizes all of it as his power again, just by the switch of perspective.
yes, and also interesting that I just to step back even more from that. It's also interesting that I chose the metaphor of the sword to describe this thing,
Yes,
because that actually my power or my life force, I can see it as a deadly weapon that is killing me, that is coming at me, or I can see it as, and this is a full circle. I love this moment because it encapsulates so well what we want to convey in this podcast. It was exactly what I talked about before. Like my mind was just giving me this metaphor, and now I am back in this. I am so all of a sudden in touch with this sword. Just when before I was talking about a warrior that is coming up in me, and the warrior is just like, yeah, I can work in your favor, but I can also work against you. Like if the warrior is coming at you, then obviously you're afraid of him. So um,
yeah,
brilliant. Feels really. I feel very like what's the word? Mindful. Like my thoughts are. It felt like there's a volume knob, and my thoughts are like 70% less present, which is also nice considering that we started the episode talking about anxiety and like a lot of doubts and things like this. And it feels like now that is dialed down a bit, and I feel very um, peaceful and calm. And I can feel like I can see things in the way they are. Like I can just look at my furniture and all the things lying around here, and it feels like I'm not. I just see them. I just see them as they are, like the being that they are in the world, and not what I make of them. And that is, it feels like that's the presence of peace that I just made with this, yeah, with my surroundings, with aliveness.
yeah, that's beautiful. And I want to add one more thing and go even beyond this full circle moment now, because there is a big difference, and we want to go beyond theory. I mean, right now, Tim and I are sitting here and we're doing a session, and that's great. That's step number one. But the difference always happens in taking action. And you can always increase the volume, so to say, of this kind of anxious energy. You know, that's what it was before, anxious energy. Now that we've alchemized that and changed the interpretation, it's almost like an infinite source of power. It's almost like the more fear I feel, the more this powerful warrior god gets infused with more energy and more aliveness and more life force energy. So just thinking about taking action, like doing something that you know you need to do, it will immediately create a new sense of anxiety. And then you can again alchemize this into just
Oh,
being the source of power for this being.
mm,
So it's like, okay, I need to make this phone call. I need to upload this piece of content, whatever it is. I need to do this like script that I've been procrastinating for a week. You think of it, you think of like right after this podcast, I'm gonna do it, and boom, anxiety avoidance, new source of energy for this powerful being. Again, in the beginning, it feels like, oh shit, this was just theory, but now that I actually want to take action, it doesn't work anymore because I'm afraid again. And switch, like, oh, more power. Thank you. More power, because more anxiety means more energy for more aliveness, more juiciness for this being that can do whatever it wants to do.
yes. Yes. Totally. Totally. That's amazing. And also, the anxiety for me, and I think this is very human, might also be the case for everyone that's listening, is often a reason not to do something. But now it becomes more a motivation to do it still. Like to see, oh, that feeling is back again. And now instead of, oh, I'm procrastinating, I'm afraid and should go and hide, it's like, oh, wait, I can just do this alchemical process again and feel into the feel like strip. First step is strip away the story, be with the pure sensation. Like, really, most of the times it's something like tension, but even tension is just a word. It could be like something like tingling, but really stay with the immediate experience.
Yes.
And then from that experience, find like something that is, even if it's just 0.5%, that is pleasurable about that, and focus on that and expand on that. And then you will see that it's almost like you watch the sensation with different eyes, and in that same, it's almost like quantum theory. It's like a different person. Like, I don't want to build that bridge. I think most of it is ridiculous, but it's a nice metaphor, because the way that you change the way you look at it, and that is changing the sensation as well. And that is so ridiculous, because you are not changing, you're not modifying the sensation, you're modifying your relationship with the sensation. And that is what's causing this alchemical moment. So very often we say that we're not healing our emotions, we're healing the relationship with our emotions. You're not
Yes.
healing your life, you're not fixing your life. If there's something you need to fix, and even that is just a concept, then it's how you relate to things, because that is also where your agency lies. Like, I cannot take a magic wand and do some stuff and just change that this is there. I cannot do that. But what I can do, and this is also what Viktor Frankl, for example, called the last freedom of a human being, is change our relationship to our life and to whatever we encounter. That's what
Yes.
we always have power on.
Yes. I love that. Exactly. Changing the relationship or changing the perspective. You can also call it that. And I want to go even further and say this is not even a doing. It's a recognition. It's what is the highest relation? What is the most valuable relationship you can have to life is love. Love is the highest way of relating to what is. And so the transformation always goes towards love. The process of alchemy always goes towards love. It's how much more can I love what is? And you just you could also describe what was just happening as you fell in love deeper with your experience, with life.
Yeah.
And that is the direction, so to say, that we are going into, but it's not an active process. Why not? Why is it not an active doing? Because this is already the case. You already love life exactly as it is. You can even go deeper. You are life. There's nobody there that could hate life or not love life. There's just life happening right now, and you are it. And that is the deepest and fullest embrace possible towards life. Like, I know this could sound theoretical for some of you, but I'm still going for it because some people might deeply resonate with it, and then it's important for you to hear it. And so what's happening is you fall in love with life, but it's not an active process. You just realize that you are life already, and you are already deeply in love with life because you are one with life, and that is the deepest form of love there is being one with something.
Yes, exactly. And I feel that sounds so new. Like it may sound new agey, but it's actually the opposite. Because what new agey love and light, if you believe in such things, you may overstep a crucial point in that whole process, and that is to accept that you have a shadow and that you have a dark side and that you are suffering, like not judging it, but not acting like this is love and light already. No, you need to take the step before that and be willing to confront that uprightly. And then it is, and this is like also something that I learned in the past weeks. It is true that whatever healing list means, it it has to do with bringing more love into our lives in some way, shape, or form. Like to and but that can also mean that you fall in love with something that is deeply unlovable, and you can't just brush that over with a calendar quotes or just a love and light meditation. Like, these things are beautiful, but to do the deep work, you need to be able to confront suffering, and also also the misery in that.
Yes,
Like, you
you
need
need
to
to,
be the victim
exactly. You need to
first.
be able to confront truth and not
Yes.
run away from truth. So, like, what is your truth? Your truth is you're deeply afraid. You feel deeply helpless. You feel helpless. You feel deeply ashamed. You are not at all able to face the pain because you're so fucking afraid of it. This is your truth. So you need to be able to face that, even if it sounds like negative and you don't want it. And then you need to face the truth that you don't want it and you want to run away from it and you want to hide in spirituality. You need to hide, you need to confront all of those truths, and only then this is the automatic path to love. But it's not the mental path to love of like skipping, like you said, some of the steps in between. It's through the darkness into the light and not away from the darkness into the light.
Yes.
And and I want to say one more thing. It's a practical thing, because earlier we said we want to bring this process into practice, into taking action. And then Tim said, yeah, I can always use this alchemical process now when I feel anxiety around doing a task, and then it will transform and it will be my source of energy. Okay, but then sometimes what might happen is you don't succeed. You try, but you don't succeed, and then you feel ashamed. And you're like, oh, it didn't work. It worked in the podcast. It worked yesterday. Today it doesn't work. And then you feel shame. And then you overlook again that the shame is now your new source of energy. It's
Mm,
the shame is now your new source of energy. And then you can use this again and be like, oh, yes, all the tingling feeling of the shame and all the avoidance and the, I want to almost throw up. Yes, that's your source of energy now. And then you might get angry and be like, I'm so fucking frustrated. This technique, like, I hate it. I hate that it works so well. I just don't want to do this task, okay? Like, shut the fuck up. I don't want to do this task. And then this frustration becomes your new source of energy. So don't ever stop. Always go beyond, go beyond, go beyond, go beyond. This is very important, because otherwise there could be a limitation in this process, and then you stop yourself because you're like, it didn't work like I learned in the podcast, so fuck this. I'm gonna procrastinate again.
yes. Yes, that's a good word to, or sentence or concept or whatever, to finish this up, that it's always about getting in touch with the immediate experience, like what
Yes.
you literally feel in that moment. Like, the first step is should always be to let go of any concepts, even of the concept that you are doing this practice now, because this can already blind you to what is actually happening here. And then, it's if you can't allow something, if you can't, like, let's say you're sad and you can't allow the sadness and you're frustrated about that, then it's also an emotional release. It's always about, it's almost like peeling an onion of allowing. Like when you can't allow the sadness, then can you allow that you can't allow the sadness? Maybe you're frustrated about this.
Yes.
And maybe if you can't accept that, maybe then there's a feeling of shame, like, fuck, I should do this and I feel super bad. Can you allow that? So it's always about getting in touch with what's there. And that's always a relational thing. So
Yes.
yeah, thank you, Yannick, for it's also nice to have a little shadow here behind me.
Ending with the shadow.
My shadow approves of this episode. Um, was
I don't have a shadow. I'm all love and light.
Yeah, you don't have a shadow. Oh, I recently heard a story of like a spiritual teacher that said, I don't have a shadow, which is a pretty shadowy thing to say. But we all have a shadow, and it's not about changing the fact that we have a shadow. It will always be there. Whenever there's light, there's shadow. And whenever you try to make the shadow go away, you have already created a new shadow. So it's inescapable. Don't even try. But what you can do is change the relationship to the shadow. Like, we can't stress this enough. And for this, there's different tools, techniques, whatever out there that you can harness. And I mean, this is sort of also the purpose of this podcast, to take you guys with us on the journey of changing the relationships to things that you find unacceptable and that are causing a great deal of suffering within you. So I think, or I hope, we hope that this episode has helped you with that. I'm really glad. I'm thankful for Yannick for taking me through this process. It was really profound for me. I feel pretty great, pretty calm still, and very much in flow while I notice myself speaking. And yeah, I would just leave it with that and give Yannick the final words.
Yes, thank you, Tim. It's been amazing, and I feel much better than before, and I feel creative and inspired by this episode. And yeah, if you liked it as well, explore this, and let us know in the comments if it was easy for you or what was difficult. We're always very interested. Give this episode a like, subscribe to wherever you are listening, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. And we are looking forward to having our next episode next week with Ashley, reunited, the three of us. And hope you're having an amazing day. Bye bye.
Bye bye.